We have to comment on our previous speaker who said doing the graveyard shift at a conference like this is difficult. Well, thanks, Tom, wherever you are, because I'm after you. So that's great. Okay, so Hyundai Farm, we farm basically about 15 miles northwest of York. We are in the Vale of York here. The Yorkshire Dales about 15 miles to our west, and the North Yorkshire Moors 15 miles to the east. So this area is all the Vale. We're just at the point where it starts to rise gently, so we're undulating land, but we're by no means hilly. 260 hectares mixed arable and sheep, and it is split over 3 units, which just makes management of it slightly more problematic. The usual suspects of different cropping across the farm. We do let land out for potatoes, and we sow stubble turnips to let land out for sheep grazing, and we have bed breakfast cattle on the farm. They utilise the fold yards and some of the permanent grasses. The only slide of stats that I'll give you, and this, I just pulled this up the other day, DEFRA's Farm Practice Survey 2019, so it's 3 years ago, and it was this figure at the bottom that quite shocked me, and it said that 47% of farmers believe there was no action necessary in relation to greenhouse gas emission decisions. What is quite shocking about that is the fact that government use these surveys and metrics in their policy-making decisions. And you can quite well imagine why we're getting slammed a bit for not doing anything about carbon if that is our attitude. I sincerely believe that 3 years on from that, if that survey is carried out again, we will have moved, drastically improved our attitude to managing carbon. But it does just show where we were a short time ago. Anyway, back to the farm. So this is Hyundai Field here, and there's just 3 or 4 of the fields around the farm. This is an outlying block, part of a block there, that's a 50-acre field. What I just wanted to demonstrate here was the clay percentage. So we're looking at soil type across the farm. At Hyundai Field, we are pretty much a silty, loamy sand. We're over gravel, we're over Sherwood sandstone. It's pretty free draining. It's practically any day land. It's very, very flexible. On this soil type down here, you can see that actually the clay content is much higher. More than that, it is over clay. If we plough this up, you're into blue, yellow clays just below the plough soil. It's horrible stuff. It sits wet. It's cold in winter. It's cold in spring. As Gary said, here on the better land, we have a 9-year rotation, and that does involve 3-year grass lays. It does involve livestock on the farm. So you may now call it regenerative. It's probably fashionable, but we've been doing that for years, and we just call it a good rotation. On the clay lands down here, we're operating a 5 or 6 year rotation. It's based around wheat. We return straw, we chop the straw back into as residue. And we use pretty unreliable break crops of oilseed rape and peas. It's challenging land, is this down here. And although we're making progress with it, the risk-reward factor down here is much higher. So, our carbon journey, where did it all start? And it's probably 8 or 10 years ago, we were actually realising that some of our soils were losing what we call this structural integrity. And it started with looking at the heavy land. Down there we used to pull a trio through it every 2 or 3 years to break up compaction underneath or just move the soil around, and then we'd drill off the top. What was then happening, as soon as it rained, we were getting capping. So we were making a real nice fine seedbed, but those clay particles, the very, very fine stuff on the surface, was running together immediately. So although we could get good establishment, the root zones were being compromised immediately. And with that, we were losing this interaction between the air, the root zone, and the subsoils. And it was just this realisation that something is going wrong with what we're doing. On the better land, we were ploughing and combination drilling. It was a historic hangover from what we've done for years when we had a lot of staff on the farm. We were incorporating muck, so you plough, etc., you plough in front of roots. the problem was we were completely overworking that land. It did not need that degree of intervention. And in line with that, we could see that the crops were establishing okay, but it was the actual development of the crops which was becoming unreliable. We could get them up and away, but you could see they were being compromised very early in the growth. On the better land, we got away with it much longer, but coming summer, we could see where we'd gone over with the combination or with the rolls. We were starting to see that we were interrupting that biology by reconsolidating that soil profile. So how we looked at it was, in a lot of ways, we thought we were doing the right thing. On the stronger land, we were trying to bring life and air into it with deep cultivations. And on the better land, we had this 9-year rotation, we had muck, we had grass in the system. We thought we were doing the right thing, but every year we were pressing reset. We were never allowing the soil biology to grow. It had 12 months in a cycle, and that was it. We were restarting every year. I did mention staffing. We used to have 4 or 5 staff. Our last member retired after 40 years, about 4 years ago. So it was a time where it was an opportunity for us to really review where we were and what we were going to do. A lot of research. And what did we come back with? Strip till. We decided this was the route that we were going to go down. We looked at direct drilling, but again, focusing on the stronger land, we saw the risk profile of that and it's the potential for that to fail in maybe 2, 3, 4 years out of 10. We couldn't take that as a risk. So we liked the idea of a little bit of cultivation, but we only go 4 inch deep with the front legs on this. But it does just energise the soil and allow a bit of mineralisation. So anyway, we started on the stronger land back in 2013, tried it out down there, and then we rolled it out across the farm by 2019. So this was our first step in addressing this soil biology issue. Talking with our agronomist, we were looking at different ways where we could perhaps measure what we were doing. And it was at that point that we were introduced to the helix concept, and we are now a helix farm. And what that has allowed us to do is to go down this road of data collection. Don't be afraid of data collection. It's what you do with it. And we're now building a lot more resilience into our business because we understand more, A, what we're doing, B, why we're doing it, and C, what the responses are to the actions of A. Interestingly, this year we're doing some nitrogen use efficiency trials, which I think are going to be massively beneficial for us. Standard practice of 220 kilos on wheat, I don't think we will ever go back to that. And it's not just about prices, this is about also reducing our carbon budget. So I can see our nitrogen use being considerably lower over the next few years. And some of you will have heard of TerraMap. We were also introduced to this as part of the helix concept. So it allowed us then to start mapping the fields. And we feel that we get great data and great abilities to interpret what is actually going on now, in response to the farm practices. So, on we go with the pictures. Organic matter on our farm. Again, this is the lighter land here, and we've got some obviously sandy areas, 1 to 2%, 2.5, pretty standard. Interesting, you'll no doubt pick up on these higher areas down here. This has been in grass for about 30 years. These are rotational grasses. So you can see as they come through the rotational cycle, you can actually see what a difference it makes pretty quickly to have grass within that rotation. Notwithstanding what's been said earlier on about the value of short-term layers, they certainly do play a part. But if we compare our percentages down onto the clay soils down here, they're much better. So, well, gosh, that rotation down there must be doing a good thing. Our figures are better. We view it differently. And that is, again, you can see 30, 40, up to 50 tonnes a hectare here, but we're struggling in some of these areas down here. Now, we don't know whether we are peak carbon or not. We don't know where we are on that metric. But I seriously hope that as we are judged on carbon, it's not this figure, because our differences here are down to soil type. It's the geology, and that is something that you cannot change. Now, if you bear in mind, we've run this massively long rotation here for, as long as I can remember, it probably goes back 100 years or more, a bit like Rothamsted, We've had grass in the rotation all that time and livestock, and these are our levels now. So are we at peak carbon here? Can we do more? Genuinely, I'm not sure that's what we're measuring. So what do we look at? Our decision on the farm is that the metric that we are going to try and manage most, yes, we're going to keep on trying to build organic matter within the rotation, but it's this element of carbon which is active. And for us, this is the short-term stuff. This is talking about soil biology. It's about the life and soil health. And you can see actually that the situation's reversed here. So on this colder clay soil down here, our active percentage is lower than on here. I put that element down to our management and our rotation. So our baselines of tonnes a hectare, hugely influenced by soil type. It's very, very slow to react to building carbon. It's the active element that we look to manage. So, how are we going to do that, and how has the Helix and TerraMap helped us? I'm quite surprised this is the first picture of a sod and a worm in it, actually. I thought the presentations would be full of them. But anyway, so we've identified, and it's not rocket science, management of organic matter is absolutely key to us. And how we're going to change our management within this rotation is, in line with the mapping, we're going to, let's say, try and variably apply certainly our organic manures in certain areas, and we're going to spread them out on those areas which need it more, as opposed to just a blanket application over the field. It's a bit of a crude approach in some respects, but we've got to target those weaker areas and see if we can get those up, so we get a better balance across the fields. We're going to continue to work to build these base levels up through rotation. We do bring muck in from muck for straw deals, because we don't have enough from the livestock enterprises. But also key to us is this bottom element: reduce your losses. Carbon building is not a one-way process. If you don't look after those elements which are at risk to the business, then you will undo the good. And that sort of goes back a bit to the point about where we are in this perhaps 100 years of trying to build carbon, is that have we been increasing the losses through our over-cultivating the land? And for us, I think that's been one of those real wake-up moments that, by rights, we've been doing the right thing. Should we be in a better position? We find cover crops. Now we've been growing those 6-7 years, I think, introducing them into the rotation. Cover crops are a difficult one because you don't take them to harvest, and so you don't really know what your monetary value is from them. We just cancel that approach and attitude. Building that biomass above surface is great for mopping up nutrients. We are sequestering carbon with it. We are taking on board sunlight, and we are producing biomass on the surface. Our policy for destruction, if we can, is sheep graze. So they break down a lot of the more difficult, longer-term breaking down lignins in the straw structures. If we can get sheep to graze it, it's a quicker conversion for us. But over and above what's above the surface, for us, it's what's below ground. And it's this mixture of varieties, it's the different rooting systems, the different root zones, and what they do for the soil biology. We are wanting to feed those microbes, that bacteria, that whole soil biome. That's what we're trying to really stimulate. And cover crops is giving us an extra chance in the rotation to give something different other than cereal roots, or roots from potatoes and fodder beet that we grow. It's another opportunity to bring something different to to that soil biome. And our policy of minimal mechanical intervention, and that is what the strip till is doing for us. Okay, it's not direct drilling, it's not no-till, but for us, it allows us to, I suppose, cope with the different soil types that we have. We can't have 2 different drills or 3 different drills for the different soil types. So this is our middle road. People would say to us that you will notice a yield drop when you start changing your system. I have to say, it's been the complete opposite for us. Our soil structures started to improve literally from day one. And we certainly noticed that the ponding areas that we used to get on the strong land and the headlands which didn't used to yield, they came straight back into production. And that's where our yield boost has come from. Now, we're not a straight line improvement. We are up and down. That's the reality of farming. But we do know that we are moving in the right direction. And we have to see it. Worms. People will again say to me, we can't do what you're doing with no livestock on the farm. Those little fellas, they are your best livestock, and we should all have them. And if you do nothing else in terms of trying to understand where you are on your carbon journey and what you are doing and are you benefiting the soil, go look for these fellas. Because if you haven't got them, you really do have an opportunity to change what you're doing to build that population. And if you have got them, can you do anything to improve the numbers? But they are the absolute key proxy for whether you are doing a good job or not. If you've got worms, the rest of your bacteria and that life in the soil will come into the cycle. And I will just say here, I hope you can sort of see, that looks a real nice friable soil. It's open structure, there's plenty of pores there. I took that spit up about 6 weeks ago. After I'd taken the photograph, I took a handful of soil and I squeezed it, and it turned to a clay ball, because this is mucky old clay, and water came out of it. You would never believe it from looking at that. And this is the importance of building your soil biology. The ability of that soil to absorb and filter water has improved just completely out of proportion. Like I say, it just sits over clay. It's horrible, mucky stuff, but that has the potential to perform. And we are still just on part of that journey. So future strategies for us. Carbon and soil health, for us, they're interchangeable. We're aiming towards the same thing. They're not different terms. And I say to people, it's this component here, it's soil health. You can look at your financial planning, you can check your machinery shed, you can tell me your yields, you can tell me the buildings that you've got and the investments that you've made. Everything depends on that. If you're going to invest in your soil health first. It is a foundation where all the other components of your business will sit upon, and I think particularly in those years as we're facing now, where we are going to be under severe financial strain, unless wheat makes £1,000 a tonne by tonight, it is genuinely going to be the soil health that will carry you through these very difficult times. And what do we see as critical elements? It sort of sums up. We talk about the capacity of the soil. How efficient is it at converting water nutrients into an output? And for us, that output is food. Strong biological activity. I've talked there about our worms, about our soil biology, that biome underground. It is absolutely key for us, and we are doing everything we can to defend and build that element there. And resilience, again, going back to that last slide, it's the capacity of your soil to withstand stresses and strains. And I think we are achieving that through the practices, but we are only partway along the journey. Carbon value. I maybe have to take issue with Nigel from one of his comments earlier. I'm not a huge fan of carbon offsetting. It has a place and it will have a place. For some industries and businesses, it probably will be their only way to manage some element of carbon. But to be quite honest, just because I've drunk a pint of your beer, I do not care that you plant me a tree in a forest somewhere. I'm not interested. Sort your own job out first. So where do we potentially see a value in carbon? And again, it has been mentioned once today, carbon insetting. And where I would like to go, and this is completely personal point of view, is I'd like to keep the value of carbon within the supply chain. And what I mean by that is, fortunately through the Omnia programme, there's a model being built where we will hopefully know very accurately what the carbon value is per unit produced for whatever leaves the farm. And I think if we can validate that, and that can be recognised, that is a huge step forward. And why that is important is because we know, again, as Nigel said, the distillers, the supermarkets, the millers, they all want to know the value of what's coming onto the farm. I don't actually want a supermarket coming and saying to me, this is the bar that you have to jump to supply us. That's red tractor nonsense. It doesn't get us a premium. What I would really like our end users in particular is to talk to us on this journey, try and keep the value within the chain and say, that load of wheat has got an X carbon value, we will pay you a premium for it. Nigel said his farmers don't want a premium. That's where I may beg to differ. Pay us a premium for that, and you can factor that into your carbon footprint, and it keeps it within our value and supply chain. And the reason I think we will have the power to be able to do that is because carbon is going to be a global market. If you as an end user don't want to join us on the journey, then we will sell it elsewhere. It's apparently 1.7 billion market for the UK. We're not going to give that away easily. That's the thought I should leave you with. Thank you very much.